Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here out in Islip, and I'm joined, of course, by two great elected officials, Steve Ballone, our county executive and a U.S. Army vet, and Angie Baby, whatever her last name is, who just do a wonderful job as Islip Town Supervisor. I want to thank Patrick Donahue. He's founder of Project 9 Line, an organization that helps veterans. This was an old DAV post. It was closed for 5 years, and Patrick, due to his hard work, has now got a place where veterans can get help. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much. We have Victor Bohm. He's the Senior Director of Digital Engagement for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and a U.S. Air Force veteran. We have Tom Ronayne from our Suffolk Veterans Service Agency Director, Mel Cohen from the Jewish War Veterans, Dennis Sullivan, past state commander of VFW, and Captain John Cochran, who I served with his dad in the assembly. We were good friends. So you got more hair than him? Yes. Okay.
Thanks, Senator.
Captain John Cochran, who's a councilman from Islip and a Navy vet. So, we're always here to help our veterans. And I want to thank everybody here for the great work they do helping our veterans day in, day out. But we're here today in addition for a specific and important reason. And that is, we have 3.5 million veterans in the U.S., tens of thousands here on Long Island and Suffolk and Nassau counties. In fact, this region has a percentage of veterans that's much higher than the national average because our people volunteer, our people are patriots, our people save and fight for America. And we all know what our veterans do. They risk their life and limb to make sure that we're free, that we're safe. And when a veteran enlists, that's when the federal government says to them and incurs the cost, if God forbid you're injured, if God forbid you're killed, we're going to take care of you if you're injured and your family if you're killed, if you die in combat. And we've always done that. And so when we find new ways that veterans are hurt when they serve in combat, we can't turn our back on it. We can't say it's going to cost money. Of course it's going to cost money. We've got to do something. And that's what's happened here with burn pits. These veterans behind me and the men and women they represent and so many others risked everything. And they still, even when they get cancer and lung disease from burn pits, they are forced to jump through hoops and almost beg and plead to get help for themselves, even with serious cancers and lung disease. What we're saying here today, with burn pits, with Agent Orange, with everything else, although today we're focused on burn pits, if you are there and you are exposed, you get the help. Not you have to jump through hoops and the burden of proof is on you to prove that you were injured. The burden of proof is on the... So let me talk a little bit about burn pits. We all know that certain types of sickness, when you're exposed to toxic exposure, we've learned this from our firefighters, we've learned this from 9/11, it takes years before the illness comes about, even though it was caused by the exposure. And that is true of burn pits. With burn pits, they put fuel and other toxins in these big pits and they burnt them. And they told veterans they were following orders. Go guard the burn pit, go watch it, go walk by it, go do this, go do that. And many of them are now getting cancers and other kinds of respiratory illnesses in particular through exposure. And so today we're taking our Honoring Our PACT Act here to Long Island to make the case, but also prove the need, okay? I talked about this in Washington, but this is not a Washington issue. This is a Long Island issue. We just need Washington to solve it, to help solve it. So we're here today with our vets at this great organization to announce that sicknesses that have reared from burn pits and their toxins must be added to the conditions that the VA covers, period. As you'll hear from some of those who are going to speak today, for decades we sent our men and women in uniform into battle with orders to use or expose themselves to dangerous chemicals. This happened with Agent Orange. We all know that our Vietnam vets were exposed to Agent Orange. It was well known that Agent Orange caused certain illnesses, and to this day, the VA is still fighting, giving the presumption on to the benefit of the veteran rather than on putting it on them, because they're the ones who are supposed to take care of us. And we've been fighting. For years I fought to get certain illnesses, and we succeeded in some, like bladder cancer, like Parkinson's disease, and others, thyroid, on the list of exposure to Agent Orange. But to this day, the OMB is still resisting, not the VA, things like hypertension. Well, we don't want that to happen with burn pits or with Agent Orange or anything else. So what this law says is not only are burn pits included in injuries, quote unquote, to our men and women who fought for us, but the presumptions when you're exposed changes. And if the VA wants to take it away from you and not give you the help, they got to prove it. They don't make the veteran prove it. And that will change the world, not just for burn pits and not just for Agent Orange, but for every kind of exposure that our veterans get in the field of combat. So there is substantial evidence demonstrating the link between the exposure to burn pits and the health conditions our veterans face. Toxins in burn pit smoke have been shown to have long-term, excuse me, it's a little windy here, okay, long-term effects on the ability to breathe. They cause cancer, they cause damage, severe damage to internal organs. But when our veterans come and say, I have these things, and here's proof I was exposed to a burn pit in Iraq and Afghanistan, the VA says, well, you have to prove that the disease was caused by this and not by something else. That's an outrage. That is, as we would say in Brooklyn, an effing outrage. Ladies, you do not have to fill in the letters. Okay? That's how you say it in the Navy, too. No, in the Navy, you don't use the initial. Angie's heard it, I know.
Once or twice.
But in any case, so that's what we're doing. As I said, 2 years ago, we were out here on Long Island talking about Agent Orange. We won. I put in the defense authorization, three more illnesses that came about from Agent Orange. We're still working on hypertension. That's the last one left. But we did succeed. We're going to succeed now, but we're going to succeed for everything. We're no longer going to do each bill for each specific injury, even though this is focused on burn pits. This is going to be for everything, all the kinds of exposures that people have. So, our veterans fought for us, and I want to say to my colleagues here, my friends, as majority leader, I'm not all powerful, but I have some clout, as these two people know. And one of the things I got is the ability to decide what goes on the floor. I tell every senator, since this bill has already passed the House, you're going to have to vote on this. You can't run and hide from it. We're going to have a vote on the floor this year in this Congress on this bill. With that, let me turn it over to Mr. Steve Bellone.
Thank you very much, Senator. It's great to be here. Supervisor Carpenter, of course, Councilman Cochran, thank you for his service. Thank you to Patrick Donahue hosting us here for the great work that he's done, his service to our country. Tom Renane, our Veteran Service Director, his service. And to all the men and women here who have served our country, thank you. God bless you for your service and what you've done for our country. To Senator Schumer, we want to say once again thank you. Just a couple weeks ago, we were together with the Senator, with many of the veterans here and other veterans at the VA hospital.
And we're making progress on that already, which
100%.
I'll tell you about in a few weeks.
Pushing back against these cuts. The Senator was out instantly fighting back against that, and he talked about their expanding the services that the VA offers, not cutting them. And here he is talking about that now, fulfilling what he said just a couple of weeks ago, and continuing to stand up to fight for our veterans. Look, the reality is we know this, Angie knows this. Veterans here are the backbones of our communities. They are the people who are the volunteers continuing to serve. The same way they served our country, they're continuing to serve here in our communities. And when you're in the military, I was very fortunate to have served during peacetime. I served stateside. Many of the people here served in combat. I have the utmost gratitude and respect for all veterans and those who've served our nation in time of war. But anyone who's served in the military knows when you're given an order, it's not optional. There's no room to say, well, let me think about it for a little while. You're given an order. I hear some people laughing. You're given an order, you execute that order. That's it. And the reality is we know thousands, hundreds of thousands of veterans who have been exposed to toxins and chemicals, burn pits, and these other environmentally harmful agents. We have an obligation to give them the health care that they need, no questions asked. Senator Schumer has always believed that. He has fought for it, and he's continuing to do that once again for our veterans here on Long Island. And Senator, we are very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Angie, baby.
Thank you so much.
We got the memo.
I
Look at
know.
this. Whoa.
All of us. Really, it's so fitting that we should be here hearing about this announcement in front of this building and Project 9 Line and an incredible job that they continue to do each and every day for our veterans. And Senator Schumer is there each and every day for our veterans. And listening to him talk about all of this morning and knowing that he's introducing this legislation and having this legislation passed, how sad is it that it takes legislation to do what we should be doing?
Right.
But how lucky are we that Senator Schumer is there making sure that what needs to be done will be done. And whether it's Agent Orange or the burn pits or whatever other ailment may come upon our veterans, it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to make sure that we are there for them as they were there for us. Right. And to the veterans that are here this morning, giving back to our community in the American Legion and the AMVETS and the DAV and all of the veterans organization constantly giving back. And I know that you're working hand in hand with our Veterans Advisory Board, and we're so fortunate. Captain John Cochran, Councilman Cochran chairs that Veterans Advisory Board, and they are steadfast in their commitment to our veterans and making sure that they advocate for the veterans and advocate for legislation. So they'll be there hand in hand with you, Senator Schumer. Thank you so much. God bless our senator, and God bless our veterans, and certainly God bless America. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Donahue, as I mentioned him earlier, he's the founder of Project 9 Line, who took this vacant building and turned it into a haven and help for so many of our veterans. So thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
I feel good about that.
Sure, Patrick Donahue, Patrickdonohue. I'm the president and founder of Project 9 Line, and I'm also a veterans law attorney.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing. So I'd like to explain how important this bill is. This legislation is very important because it's going to create a presumption. Now, there's 3 elements to service connection. The 3 elements to service connection are exposure, a current diagnosis, and a medical nexus, a connection between the exposure and between the diagnosis. For many, many years, and in every other instance, veterans have to prove the medical nexus, the connection between their exposure and their current diagnosis. It's the hardest thing to do. So for years, we've been fighting with the VA over a bunch of these illnesses that are in this legislation, trying to prove that it was in fact caused by service. This is going to remove that hurdle for all the veterans that have these diagnoses and make it possible for them to receive service connection, health care, and compensation for their disability, which is a great, great thing. Now, my own story. So I've been exposed to burn pits, right? I have severe obstructive sleep apnea, and I have a brain tumor. Now, I've been fighting with the VA for the past 6 years to get my brain tumor service connected. They said that it wasn't caused by my exposure to burn pits. I just recently proved it. Because I did not have a presumption, I had to prove the medical nexus. Now, I had to do that by going back by old case law for veterans that were exposed to Agent Orange. Because what makes burn pits and Agent Orange similar is the main ingredient in Agent Orange is dioxin. The main ingredient when you burn plastic, also dioxin. Dioxin is the most dangerous chemical compound the human body has ever encountered. And that's why we used it to kill all the vegetation in Vietnam, which exposed all the Vietnam vets to it. Now we're burning plastic, which is emitting dioxin, and we're breathing it in. So now all the post 9/11 vets are also exposed to dioxin, which again is the most dangerous chemical compound the human body has ever encountered. So I had to use old case law from years ago of Vietnam veterans that were able to prove that their meningiomas, their brain tumors, were caused by dioxin, Agent Orange. So I had to create a nice timeline for them and prove to the VA, which I was able to do, that dioxin exposure by way of Agent Orange and dioxin exposure by way of burn pits is the same thing, and that my disability was in fact caused by my exposure to burn pits. And they agreed with me finally. It took 6 years.
But they make every other veteran go through the same thing again.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
because they proved it with him,
It
doesn't mean
Yeah,
it works
doesn't
for
matter.
anybody else. That's
Exactly.
one of the big problems.
He's right.
And
It's a
this says it's for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to.
He's right. So just because I won my case does not make it any easier for veterans to win their meningioma cases. But this legislation is going to make it easier for them to win all of the cases for all the disabilities that are on that list. So thank you all for coming out. Thanks for caring about veterans. And nothing's really more important than taking care of our sick veterans. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what I want to add to what Patrick said is these kind of rare brain cancers, respiratory illnesses, in the regular population hardly ever occur, but they occur in large numbers in people who are exposed to dioxin. So there's a link, there's a nexus, even though the VA has denied it.
yep, you're spot on. Thank you, Senator.
Right.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
Just kind of layman's terms, what is a burn pit? What's the circumstances that's happening, and how long exposure is the normal person kind of exposed to?
So a burn pit is an open air hole in the ground. The one that I lived next to for a whole year of my life was a football field size, wider than a football field and longer than a football field, and about 20 foot deep. And we burned every single thing that came, nothing left the base. So everything from human waste to medical waste to plastic, a lot of plastic, to uniforms, to the majority of the pile was plastic water bottles, right? Because we drink water out of bottles just like you do here. We do that overseas. This is 10 years ago. So the
They don't
majority.
have a sanitation department picking
Yeah.
it up. They put them in a big pit and burn it.
Yeah.
So basically, the bases in Iraq, instead of dealing with it, dealt with their trash by just burning.
Yep.
Exactly.
Correct.
Afghanistan, Iraq, and a whole list of other countries.
No curbside.
Yeah,
pickup.
everywhere.
Right.
So
You don't-
the
you don't
SOP
put-
was to
you
burn
don't put
everything.
your garbage outside your tent every Tuesday and Friday.
Yeah. And this SOP was to not have anything leave the fob base that you lived on. So everything must be burned on the base.
Okay. Good question.
Thank
Good
you.
answer. He did a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Yes, thank
Next,
you.
we're going to have Victor. Victor Bohm from the Afghanistan, Iraq Veterans of America.
Yes,
Victor,
sir.
thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Senator Schumer, elected officials, my good friend Patrick Donahue, veterans and supporters for being here to call attention to a most critical issue affecting our community, military toxic exposures, including burn pits. My name is Victor Bohm. I'm an Air Force veteran, and I work for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America as the Senior Director of Digital Engagement. On behalf of IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and more than our 425,000 members, we call on the Senate to expeditiously pass the comprehensive Honoring Our PACT Act, H.R. 3967, which passed the House on March 3rd with a bipartisan vote of 256 to 174. According to IAVA's latest member survey, over 80% of IAVA members were exposed to burn pits during their deployments, and a shocking 90% of those within the VSO community have spent years educating. 90% of those exposed believe they already have or may have symptoms. IAVA and our allies within the VSO community have spent years educating Congress, national leaders, and the public on the enormous scope of the injuries faced by our community. Year after year, the concern grows surrounding the health impacts of burn pits and other toxic exposures in recent conflicts. Burn pits were a common way to get rid of waste at military sites in Iraq and Afghanistan. The effect of toxic exposure is not just the chemicals in the smoke, but the particulate matter, dust, ashes, and other pollutants that these men and women have breathed in every single day during their service. Approximately 3.5 million veterans were exposed to burn pits and other airborne hazards, yet VA continues to deny approximately 70% of burn pit related claims. Much needed legislation would finally take the burden of proof off the veteran by creating a presumption of service connection for a list of illnesses and diseases, including cancer, as well as allowing veterans to receive health care from the VA. While VA has made many strides forward in the past year, creating presumptives of 12 illnesses due to toxic exposure, it is simply not enough. Veterans are looking towards Congress for bold action and leadership. The time to pass critical comprehensive legislation to ensure that veterans have the health care benefits and a framework for how presumptive illnesses are handled is now. It is for these reasons that IAVA asked the U.S. Senate to support the Honoring Our PACT Act. This critical piece of legislation is a culmination of years of work by veterans organizations like IAVA to finally address veterans that have suffered from the exposures. We understand that there have been a number of bills introduced in the Senate to address a range of toxic exposure issues, yet the PACT Act is the legislation that will provide the most comprehensive solution.
Right.
Veterans that have been exposed are now sick, cannot wait any longer for the health care and benefits they have earned through their service. Additionally, the PACT Act includes an important framework to address military toxic exposures in the future. We must ensure that the 117th Congress is when veterans finally receive comprehensive legislation that includes health care, benefits, and a framework to address one of the signature injuries of the post-9/11 wars. IAVA and other VSOs will continue to advocate strongly for the passage of this legislation. We have worked tirelessly to address concerns from members of Congress and the VA to ensure that this legislation can not only pass into law, but also do without overwhelming VA resources. On behalf of the 3.5 million veterans who were exposed to burn pits and other airborne hazards, and on behalf of the veterans behind the nearly 70% of burn pit related claims that were denied by the VA, I implore you to pass comprehensive toxic exposure legislation supported by nearly every veterans group in the country, and finally keep America's promise to take care of those who have fought to defend us. Congress must pass comprehensive legislation without delay. Senator Schumer, thank you for your leadership, for having our backs on issues such as these, and promising to bring the Honoring Our PACT Act to the Senate floor. Excuse me. We also want to thank Senator Schumer's staff for their attention to this issue and their tireless work and dedication to all veterans issues. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. And two of my great staff, Mike Iannelli and Annalisa, whatever your last name is, are here. I don't know Angie's either. Okay. All right. Questions on this subject? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to fight till we pass this bill.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Thank you.